Welcome back to Backspace Academy. Coming up next, what I'm going to do is run through all of the products and services that are offered on AWS. Now, there's an enormous amount of services, so rather than go through them all in one hit, I'm going to break it up into a lot of sections, and then at the end of each section, I'm going to give you an example of how to use those services, and then after that, we'll do a hands-on session or a lab where you can actually use those services yourself hands-on. So what I need to do now is just give you a very quick introduction to the different types of cloud computing models that are available. Infrastructure as a service, it contains the basic building blocks for cloud IT. What that means is that is nuts and bolts stuff. So if we want to launch a Linux server and we want to manage that Linux server ourselves, that is how we would do that as infrastructure as a service. And we would do that using the Elastic Compute Cloud or EC2 service. The next level is Platform as a Service or PaaS. And that's where AWS will take a little bit more control over over the underlying infrastructure. So AWS manages that underlying infrastructure and the hardware and operating system normally. And a good example of that would be the relational database service. And in that service, AWS, they provision all the operating system, the server and everything to run that, but you still need to do the high level administration of that database. And then finally, we've got software as a service or SaaS. And that is a complete product that normally runs in a browser, and it is mostly refers to end user applications. A good example of that would be Office 365 or Salesforce.com. And you'll hear another term used a lot with AWS, and that is serverless computing. And so that allows you to build and run applications without having to think about servers. You don't need to provision the server yourself. AWS will do that for you. It's also referred to as function as a service or abstract services. Examples of that are the simple storage service where we will be using at the end of this lecture, where we create a bucket and we put objects and files into that bucket. We don't know what's behind that bucket. Obviously, there's going to be an operating system, most probably a Linux operating system, a file server, there's going to be hard drives. We don't need to worry about that because AWS, they look after all that for us. AWS Lambda is where you can run code in the cloud, again, without service. You just provide AWS your code. AWS looks after everything for you. DynamoDB is a NoSQL database in the cloud as a service. And Amazon Simple Notification Service that can send out notifications to your users. So that's a pretty quick introduction of the different types of cloud computing models. The best way to really get a good knowledge of it is to go through all these products, get your hands on with them, and then you'll fully understand it a lot better. So there's only one more thing to do, and that is, let's get into it. Welcome back to Backspace Academy. In this lecture, we're going to run through some of the storage services that are available on AWS. Then we'll look at some examples of how you can use these, and finally, we'll finish up with a hands-on lab using one of these services. Amazon Simple Storage Service, or S3 for short, it's designed to store and access any type of data over the internet. It's a serverless service, and as such, we don't need to worry about what is behind it. There's obviously a file server, an operating system, a hard drive, but we don't need to be concerned about that at all. We just simply need to create this thing called a bucket, and then we upload objects to that bucket. The bucket grows as we add objects to it, and the size of that bucket is theoretically unlimited. AWS, it just looks after everything for us. Amazon Glacier is the cheapest storage option on AWS, and it's used for long-term archiving of data. It's a serverless service, just like Amazon S3, but it is not as readily accessible as S3. So it should only be used for content that is to be archived. You can also set up a lifecycle rule that will automatically migrate old data in Amazon S3 automatically over to Glacier for long-term archiving. Amazon Elastic Block Store, or EBS for short, is a highly available, low latency block storage, and it's specifically for attaching to servers that are launched with the Amazon EC2 service. We'll learn more about the EC2 service coming up. And it's similar to attaching a hard drive to your computer at home. Works in the same manner. It's block device storage. Amazon Elastic File System, or EFS for short, is network attached storage, and it's specifically for Amazon EC2 servers. Because it is network attached storage, this allows multiple servers to access the one data source, in a similar way to a NAS on your network at home can be accessed by multiple computers on that network. The AWS Storage Gateway enables hybrid storage between on-premise environments and the AWS cloud. It provides a low latency performance by caching frequently used data on premises while storing the less frequently data in Amazon cloud storage services. A Snowball device is a portable, petabyte scale data storage device that can be used to migrate data and large amounts of data from on-premise environments over to the AWS cloud. You simply download your data to the Snowball device, then you send it off to AWS, who will then upload that data to an AWS storage service for you. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples of using the AWS storage services. In orange there, we've got the AWS cloud. Now, we can create a VPC inside that AWS cloud. And that VPC, or virtual private cloud, is our own private space within the AWS cloud. And that is an impenetrable fortress against attack. And no one will be able to enter our own private space without us allowing that to happen. So let's just say we launch 2 servers in our VPC. Now we want these servers to have access to data and somewhere to store that data. And so in a normal environment, you would just add a hard drive to that server. So in the same way, we can attach an Amazon Elastic Block storage device to our servers. So that's great. We've now got high-speed access to our data. But what if we want that data to be available to both of those servers? So here we've got 2 EBS volumes. What if we want that data to be on one volume only? So as we know it on our computer at home, we can't attach a hard drive or a block device hard drive to multiple computers. It just doesn't work like that. So in a situation like that, in your home network at home, you would just go out and purchase a NAS, a network attached storage device. You would attach it to your network. You would set up your operating system in your desktop computers to have a mount target for that network attached storage. So when you go to your G drive or whatever it is, or E drive or F drive, whatever it is, that will point to that network attached storage. In the same way that we can do that with our network at home, we can do the same thing with AWS. So Elastic File System is network attached storage. And so that, with a mount target, can enable multiple servers to access the one data source. Now, what if we don't want to worry about mount targets and block devices and all this sort of stuff? We just want somewhere we can upload objects to, in a similar way to we do with Google Drive or something like that. And we also want to have an automated solution that over time migrates that data over to something more low cost and more long-term for archiving. Now that is where Amazon S3 comes in. And so we can use Amazon S3 to create a bucket, store objects in that bucket, delete objects, do whatever we want with it. And we can also set up a lifecycle rule on that bucket so that over a period of time, as objects age, they can be migrated over to an Amazon Glacier Vault for long-term archiving. It will still be accessible. It just won't be as readily accessible as the S3 bucket. But the advantage is that we'll be using the lowest cost storage that's available on AWS. Now, that S3 bucket will be located in the AWS cloud. It's not located in our VPC. So remember we said the VPC is our private space within the AWS cloud. And nothing gets through it without us allowing it to come through. So that is where the VPC endpoint comes in. So we can create one of those, and that will allow traffic to flow in and out of our VPC specifically for that S3 service. So let's have a look at a hybrid storage example where we've got on-site storage in a corporate data center, and we've also got that stored in the AWS cloud in Amazon S3. Why would we do that? Well, it's great for a disaster recovery solution because it provides high-speed access to our data in our corporate data center. And at the same time, we're taking advantage of the durability and availability of Amazon S3 as a disaster recovery solution. So the first problem that we're going to encounter is that this corporate data center will have petabytes of data. And to transfer that over via the internet to the AWS cloud is not going to be practical. So AWS, they can send out to us a Snowball device, and that is a high capacity device that can store petabytes of data. And so we can upload, when we receive that Snowball device from AWS, we can upload our data to that, and then we can send that back to AWS, and they will upload that for us into the Amazon S3 bucket. And so that solves that problem for us. So then we've got to find a solution for making sure that the data in our corporate data center is synced with our AWS cloud. Now that's where the AWS Storage Gateway comes in, and that will orchestrate all of that for us. And so if you've got a high-speed link between your corporate data center and the AWS cloud, which you can with the AWS Direct Connect service, you can have the AWS Storage Gateway to orchestrate and manage that all for you. And what it will do, it will get your popular content, your content that is frequently accessed, and it will store copies of that on site in your on-site storage. But at the same time, it will store all of that data in an Amazon S3 bucket for you. And so then you've got the advantage of having all of the durability and availability of Amazon S3 as a disaster recovery solution. But at the same time, you've got high-speed access to your data, which is cached on the corporate data center. Let's have a go at using the Amazon S3 service. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to use the AWS Management Console to connect into the AWS cloud. And then we're going to create an Amazon S3 bucket. We're going to upload files to that bucket, and then we're going to download files from that bucket. And then finally, we're going to empty and delete that bucket. Now there are lab notes for this lab and the further ones coming up. So make sure that you download the introduction to AWS lab notes that come with this course, and let's get into it. Now, before we start the lab, you need to make sure that you have signed up for an AWS account. If you haven't, click on the sign up button up here at the AWS website. Once you've completed that sign up process, make sure that you take note of the email address and password that you used to sign up with. So once that's done, you can go to My Account and select the AWS Management Console. Once you've done that, you can log in using that email address that you used to create your account and the password that you used as well. So once you do that, you'll be into the AWS Management Console. Okay, once we've logged in, we'll be at the AWS Management Console. From there, we can go to Services and try and find the S3 service. Now that will be in the storage category. I actually don't like to use these categories because they change quite a bit, and when you're looking for stuff, it might be moved into a different category. So it does make life a little bit difficult. The easiest way is to select up in the top right-hand corner here is A to Z. And then if you're looking for S3, just go to S for S3 and you'll find it there. So once we've got into the S3 console, the first thing we need to do is to create a bucket. Now I've already created quite a number of buckets here for different labs and whatever I've done in the past, but yours will be obviously empty. You never created a bucket and it's a brand new account. So your screen here might look a little bit different to mine, but there will still be a create button or create bucket button there. So we'll click on that. And we need to give our bucket a name. So I'm just going to put in anything there, just a whole heap of rubbish there, but you can give it whatever you want to call it. Now a bucket name needs to be unique across AWS. So if someone else has actually used that name, you can't use it as well. So it's a bit like domain names. Once you've got it, no one else can use it after that. So if I, for example, if I type \slab or something, no doubt that would have been gone. So I'll leave that as it is. It's just a whole scramble of letters there, and we'll click on next. We're not going to worry about versioning or anything like that. We'll just click on next. It's going to be a private bucket, so only us will, or only I will have access to this bucket. So we're not going to make it public. We're not going to change anything here. And next. So that's all we do there. It's got our name and region. So we're going to be in the US East region. And for all of the labs, make sure that you are in the US East region. It's the largest region and has the most services. And when services come out, they normally first come out in US East. It's also normally the cheapest region to use as well. So that looks all okay to me. We'll just click on Create Bucket. If I scroll down, I should be able to find that bucket name that I did. There we go. So just that scramble of letters there. So it will have a link to that bucket. So we'll just click on that. And there we can see our bucket is empty. So our bucket, it's simply a repository to dump objects to. Could be files, could be videos, could be a whole directory. So what we'll do now is it will upload a folder to this bucket. So we'll click on upload. Now we can click on add files here, but I don't like to use that. The easiest way is to drag and drop. So if you're going to bring in a folder, for example, it's much easier to grab the whole folder and just drop it on the form. So that's what I'm going to do now. And we just drop that whole folder onto that form. And we click on next. And it's only going to be access for us. So it's going to be private. We'll leave that as it is. And the storage class. So we've got a number of different storage classes, depending on what the availability is, how long we're going to be using it, how quickly we need access to it, all this sort of thing. So we're just going to use the standard storage class. We'll click on next. And that's just a review screen, and we'll click on upload. So there you can see down the bottom, it's starting to upload those files, that whole folder with all the files inside of it. So now that that has uploaded, we can select this folder, open it up, and we can download a file, get it back again. So let's do that. So we just click on the link in this folder to open up that folder. And I'm just going to download these lab notes. If I click on those, on that link for the lab notes, and I just do download lab notes. And there we go. So that's downloading those that PDF. Now, I just want to talk about this screen because a lot of people have a bit of trouble with this, because instead of clicking on download, they scroll down here and they click on the object URL. Now, if we click on that, and I'll do that now, this is what you get, access denied. So what that is you're trying to access through your browser directly to that object, and it's a private object, so you can't access it. So if you want to have a file that is accessed like that, you need to have it public, and you also need to enable website hosting in Amazon S3. So we'll just get out of that. So if you get that screen, that's what's happened. You've clicked this object URL instead of clicking the download link here. So that brings us to an end. Now, at the end of all of these labs, I like to clean them all up and delete everything that we've done, simply because we don't want to get billed for it. So if you're operating on a new account, you're going to be getting a free tier. And so all of this stuff that we're doing here today will be free, and we just need to make sure that we clean it up afterwards. So I'm just going to jump back and click up the top here to the link to that bucket. And I'm just going to select that folder. I'm going to go to Actions and scroll down until I find Delete. And I'll delete that. And now our bucket is empty. So one more thing we can do, if we really want to clean this up, we can go back into our S3 management console by clicking on Amazon S3 up the top right-hand side there, or top left-hand side. And if we scroll down to find that bucket, and there it is. And then we can just click delete to delete the bucket. So we need to put in the name of the bucket and confirm to delete it. So there we go. If we have a look for that bucket, it's no longer there. So that brings us to an end. And coming up next, we're going to be doing some more looking into some of the services of AWS, in particular database services. And we're going to be creating a MySQL database and connecting to that database. So some pretty cool stuff coming up, and I look forward to seeing you in that one.